Hello and welcome to English 2450 COM 2010 Week 6 lecture video number 1 on cinematography, the basics. So in this video I'm just going to be talking about what cinematography is, how it fits into or along with editing and visual design, and a little bit about the role of the cinematographer. In the rest of the videos for this week I'll be talking about the 4 aspects of cinematography, including photographic properties, framing of the shot, speed and duration of the shot, and special effects. So to get started, let's think about the etymology of the word cinematography. So the word graph, or graphy at the end of cinematography here, refers to writing, like calligraphy also refers to writing. So we know graph has to do with writing, and cinema is about movement or motion. That's why, films are called movies, because it's an image that moves, or motion pictures, right? And this is in contrast to a photograph, which is still. So the word photography also includes that graphy at the end. So we know it's writing, but photo specifically refers to light. So photography is writing in light, and cinematography is writing in movement. So one of the important things to remember about cinematography is that it's closely related to photography as an art form, only you add the additional component of movement, because unlike a still life photography, or example of photography, in cinematography, you have movement of things on the screen, right, or within the frame, or the camera moving itself. So cinematography is writing in movement. Now, okay, how is cinematography related to or different from visual design? So last week we started talking about, and the week before we were talking about visual design, right? Mise-en-scène, composition, blocking, settings, props, characters, makeup, kinesis, all of these different aspects. And how is cinematography different from those aspects? Well, one easy way to remember the difference is that visual design is what is being filmed, what is contained within the frame. So the settings, the props, the characters, the costumes, those are all of the things that are being filmed. Cinematography is how they are being filmed, the process of them being filmed. So this is what the camera is doing to capture that image. What's within the image is visual design. So the cinematography is the how, and the visual design is the what. This is also distinct from editing. Editing is what happens during and after the fact, and editing is how the pieces are put together. So the visual design is what's being filmed, cinematography is how it's being filmed, what the camera is doing, and editing is how all of the pieces are put back together, how that film is cut and edited back together. Because remember, like we talked about in the first couple weeks of class, films are not shot in order, and they're not shot kind of consecutively or linearly. It's a very recursive and circular process. So cinematography is how it is being filmed. And you can break that down essentially into 4 big kind of categories or aspects of cinematography. The first one is photographic properties. These are like the physical properties, the film stock, the lens choice. What type of photography are we doing here? So the cinematographer makes those decisions. The second thing is the framing of the shot, which we'll talk about more in a couple videos. Then the speed and the duration of the shot, and special effects. Now, some special effects are done in camera, and some are done after the fact in post-production. So when I say special effects here, I'm not referring to every single kind of special effects, just the ones that are directly related to what the camera is doing. So if we're talking about the basics of cinematography, we also have to talk about the basics of what the cinematographer is doing. Cinematographer is more commonly referred to now as the director of photography, which is often shortened to DP. So you'll hear me use the phrase in class DP. And if I say DP, I'm referring to director of photography, sometimes also still referred to as a cinematographer. The role of the cinematographer or the DP is to work with the film's director to determine those four aspects of cinematography: the photographic properties, the framing, the speed and duration, and the special effects. Now, they also kind of work as a unit head with the camera operators, the assistants, the electricians, and the grips to make sure that the shoot runs smoothly and that a sufficient number of master shots and coverage shots are obtained. Okay, so that probably doesn't make a lot of sense unless you have some kind of background here, right? One important thing to keep in mind is the cinematographer is not usually the person actually handling the camera. There are multiple cameras on the set of a film handled by camera operators. Now, they're the people that actually kind of physically run the cameras. The cinematographer is the person who plans and executes all of this, right? They're not necessarily the person actually holding the camera themselves. Maybe on a small scale film operation, maybe the main camera, but for the most part, they're just kind of the mastermind behind the scenes. They're not necessarily physically controlling the camera themselves. Now, assistants work with camera operators to ensure that the cameras are like ready to go, that they're in the right spot, that all of the film stock is preloaded if they're using film stock, for example. Electricians are obviously really important too. These are the people that make sure that the lighting rigs are where they need to be when they need to be there. And then the grips are the people who kind of move around the physical parts of the set. So a grip might be someone who moves a piece of set decor, in the middle of a shoot to accommodate a change in the camera's position. So all of these people work together with the cinematographer to make sure that the film shoot runs smoothly. Now, the other terminology here that you might not be familiar with is the idea of master shots and coverage. Now, the master shots are kind of the main primary shots taken from the main cameras. Coverage are sort of the backup shots, right? So you have multiple cameras running from multiple angles at any given point in time to make sure that enough coverage is obtained where when you move into the editing process, you can splice together that scene from different angles, from different takes, to ensure that you have everything that you need to put the entire film together. You have all of the pieces to create a continuous narrative. Now, sometimes this doesn't work out as planned and they have to go back in and do reshoots, right? So they have to get the actors back together. They have to, get the sets back kind of put together and go in and reshoot certain scenes because there's not enough coverage to kind of create the scene in the film that the director and the DP are trying to do. And that can be really expensive to reshoot. So it's important that the cinematographer and the director work together and make sure that the first time around when they're filming a given scene of a film, that they have all of the master shots and coverage that they need. So these are kind of the basic pieces of cinematography, right? A director of photography, the DP, works with the film director, the electricians, the camera operators, the assistants, the grips, to make sure that the cameras are where they need to be, when they need to be there, that they're shooting from the angles that they need to be shooting from, that they're getting all of the information that they need, so that when we move into post-production and we start working on that editing process, all of these things can be put together into one continuous scene or sequence that makes sense narratively and fits with the overall theme and vision of the film. So stay tuned for video 2 where I'll start talking about photographic properties that the cinematographer has to choose.